Gabrielle Huffstutler. I'm a senior consultant and a program leader with Lumeri. And I'm here today to talk to you about equilibrium, reaching new heights with ease. So I'd like to talk to you about my journey in establishing a sense of equilibrium within myself. And when I say equilibrium, a lot of us tend to think about balance, right? There are all these balls we have in the air. We're juggling so many things, and if we can just figure out how to perfectly juggle everything and balance things, we'll all of a sudden be happy and everything will be wonderful, and we'll have work-life balance. That's a key one, right? Making sure we have work-life balance. But a lot of times what I've discovered is that means you're taking from one thing, giving to another. There's a shuffling around of things. But what I've discovered over the last 7 months is that it's really about making sure I'm spending my time and my energy on the things that are most important to me. And what we're talking about is establishing that sense of equilibrium, which is internal. It's inside of each of us. It's not about balancing things outside of ourselves. It's really about ensuring that we have a sense of peace of mind, of calm, and of ease in what we're doing in our lives. So there's that ease word, right? Equilibrium, reaching new heights with ease. How do we figure out where we want to go with our careers and do it in a way that we don't have to suffer? So my story starts the week of March 9th, 2020. So some of you will remember very well. That was the week that all of a sudden time stood still. So that Monday, March 9th, I was doing what I would typically be doing on a Monday. So I happen to be a wife, a mother, and a full-time consultant. So on every Monday morning, I was packing my kids' lunches for school. I was making sure they got dressed, brushed their teeth, had everything they needed. I was also checking the refrigerator to make sure that all the food I had made for the week was neatly packed in there so my husband and my kids could easily have food to eat while I was away. That also meant I was checking my luggage, making sure my bags were packed, and I had everything I needed because I knew I had to drop my kids off at school and then head right to the airport to fly to my next client engagement. That was Monday. Come Thursday, everything changed. And when everything changes like that, what I've found is that we actually have an opportunity. See, everything in my world, and possibly in yours as well, I suspect maybe in yours, was disrupted that week. Times of disruption can be times for unprecedented change. There was an article in Forbes that came out where Albright had a survey where they said 61% of women are looking to pivot in their careers during this time. So you may be one of those women who's looking to change something in your career, looking to figure out where your next moves are. You also may be one of those women who works for an organization that's looking to figure out how you support those women who are looking to make a change in your career. Any one of those positions you find yourself in, this is going to be a discussion to have. And that's what I realized very early on in this time period, that I had an opportunity to look at what was really most important to me in my life and find that sense of calm and ease, of peace of mind, of equilibrium. So as I started to think my way through what could my life look like, I realized there were three elements to establishing a sense of equilibrium. 1, figure out what's most important to me. 2, suffer less. Have a much lower tolerance for things that I thought I couldn't do anything about. And 3, self-reflection. Taking that time to really look inward, bring some awareness to myself, to what I was thinking, to what I was doing. By the way, I started off my quarantine period like most other people. I had lots of fun food. I had lots of fun with my family, with my kids, who I was away from a lot prior to then. I really enjoyed spending time with my husband. And then I hit a point where I realized it was time to get down to work. It was time to really figure out how I could create a sense of equilibrium for myself that could last my entire life. So the first element of equilibrium that I mentioned, figure out what is most important to you. So how do we do that? Because everything was very important. All the things I was spending my time on were very important. My kids are important, my husband is important, my work is important. The board I'm on at the school is important. There was nothing I was spending time on in my life that didn't seem important to me. But what I realized is I hadn't taken the time to sit down and really think about and bring my focus and my attention to what was important to me. Not just what seemed important, but what was truly important to me. So the first step in figuring out what's most important to you is to take the time. So find a quiet place in your home, in your office, shut the door, let everybody out, get the pets out, the kids out, the parents out, whomever. Sit down and spend some time by yourself. And not just a couple of minutes. This isn't a quick, I know all the answers to this, I'll just figure it out, jot it down, type it out, and be done. Take the time. Grab a piece of paper and a pen. You all know these studies. There are studies out there that show when you write something down, physically write it versus typing it, it makes it more real to you. And it stimulates the cells in your brain that allow you to bring more focus and attention to what it is that you're doing. So take the time to write this out. And we'll put the questions up on the screen for you in just a moment so you can take a minute and jot them down. But here are the questions I want you to think through. What have I naturally been drawn to? Where are the places that I've found that I've naturally been spending my time or wanting to spend time? What have I realized that I'm ready to leave behind? What are those things I've noticed I don't really miss it so much? For me, for instance, I don't miss being gone 2 to 3 weeks a month every month. I'm okay not being in the airports and on the airplanes all the time. What have I realized that I'm ready to leave behind? What are the areas of my life that are most important to me? And what's important about them? So really looking at all the different areas of your life, the places where you spend your time and your energy, and get really specific. What about them is important to you? What am I passionate about? Also, what's most meaningful to me? Those are the questions that I think we take for granted sometimes. But really looking at what are the things that when you think about it, when you spend your time on it, it gets exciting. You're looking forward to spending more time there, to doing more of that. A lot of us asked our kids when they were little or asked other people's kids when they were little, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? I want you to think about, what do you want to see change in your world or in the world? Or what change do you want to see in the world or in your world? So those are the questions, and please take your time to really be thoughtful about your responses to those. Because I promise you'll start to see something emerge as you do that writing. It's going to start to become obvious where you want to make sure you're spending your time and your attention. As you start to figure out what it is that's most important to you, you'll start to notice that you begin to feel settled. That sense of equilibrium is starting to root. It's starting to be in place, and it will start to become an anchor for you in figuring out, in particular, where do you want to go in your career? Remember, equilibrium, reaching new heights with ease. We talked about the ease part, that's that sense of equilibrium, that peace of mind, that calm. Reaching new heights means you've got to figure out where it is that you want to go, what's most important to you, and what might be holding you back from getting there. So what's stopping us from moving forward toward those new heights? The second element of establishing equilibrium is about no longer suffering, lowering our tolerance level for the things we don't think we can change or do anything about. So again, I'll rewind to the beginning of this whole quarantine period. I was having a conversation with my husband, and my health came up, and he mentioned, in the 15 years or so that I've known you, I don't know that I've ever seen you have one full day where you felt really good and healthy. And it got me thinking, because I do a lot of the right things. I'm somebody that eats the way you're supposed to, works out the way you're supposed to, I pay attention to things. I force my kids to pay attention to those things. And yet he was right. There was some part of my health that I was okay with being less than phenomenal. So back in March, I found a doctor and I sought out some help to figure out, why is it that I still don't feel 100% great? And I've never had any big major health issues over the years. I've had little ones, the same thing most of us have as women. And they've all been fine and been handled by one thing or another. A doctor figures it out, we talk about it, I move forward. But I always felt like there was something underlying that wasn't getting figured out. But I had a really high tolerance for that. And in fact, I was on the road spending my time and my attention and my energy focused on making sure my kids and my husband had everything they needed for their health at home while I was away. And yet I wasn't doing the same for myself. So I found a doctor, worked with somebody to figure out, I did all the testing you can imagine, right? All the things you do when you decide you're no longer willing to suffer or be okay with things being anything less than great. So I took that time and that energy, I made that investment in figuring out what I could do about that situation. And I promise you, I have never felt better in my life. And all I did was do exactly what my doctor told me to do. But I took the time and I made the investment in myself because I was no longer willing to suffer. I lowered my tolerance level for being willing to keep moving and keep living with something that I didn't think I could do much about because I didn't have the time, I didn't have the energy, whatever the reason may have been. And since in that 5 months, 6 months that I've been working with that doctor, every one of the symptoms I was having has dissipated. And magically I lost a bunch of weight, so that never hurts, right? But that's not even what it's about. It's about not being willing to keep going with the way things are just because they are that way and I don't think I can do anything about it. The point was taking that time to do that because I saw it was something I wasn't willing to live with anymore. So that's that second element. Lower your tolerance level for the things you don't think you can do anything about and stop suffering. It's not worth it. So as we've begun to figure out what's most important to us, we've lowered our tolerance level for suffering. What starts to happen is it becomes easy to figure out what it is that you want to say yes to and say no to. Because you've really started to anchor yourself in that place of equilibrium. Just by doing those two things. And I know they're not small, easy things, but they take some time, they take some energy, it takes a willingness to spend, to make an investment in yourself. So the third element of establishing a sense of equilibrium is mindfulness. Now that's a buzzword if we ever heard one, right? Mindfulness is everywhere now. You've got mindfulness in schools, you've got magazines and books and everything all about mindfulness. Everybody's talking about mindfulness. What the heck do we even mean by mindfulness, right? When I say mindfulness, I'm really talking about self-reflection. bringing awareness to ourselves, bringing awareness to what we're feeling, what we're thinking, and using that as an opportunity to continue to foster and nurture a sense of equilibrium within ourselves. So remember we talked about balance, right? I have days where everything in my life is balanced, right? Balanced. I'm spending the same amount of time or the appropriate amount of time on a bunch of different things in my life. I also have days that don't seem as balanced. So for instance, I have days where I get up, do my workout, take my shower, make my kids breakfast, get them started on their remote learning, because that's been a journey for a lot of us, right? Remote learning for our children. I was not meant to be a teacher, okay? Let me just say that right out. I am a great mother. I am not a teacher. Thank God for the teachers that actually know what they're doing. And thank God for all of us parents that are figuring out how to teach our kids at home. However, one of the things I did start teaching my kids at home was mindfulness. So I have days where I get them all started in remote learning. I get the day kicked off. My husband's working on what he needs to work on because he's working from home now as well. We've got quite the tight house going on here. And then I lock myself in my office, and I'm in my office in virtual meetings from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then I open my door again, pop my head out, and magically everything around me is fine. The kids are eating the dinner that I probably prepped earlier, or that my husband was kind enough to make, and everything's working as it should. And I promise, the minute I open that door, or even a few minutes before, I have a split second of that feeling of guilt. That guilt of feeling like I just spent my entire day in one place on one thing and I didn't give somebody the attention they needed on something. But it's only a split second, because I have the ability to bring some self-reflection, some awareness to myself. I quickly look at the time and the energy that I spent in my day, and I realize I spent my time and my energy on what was most important in that moment. For that one day, those client meetings were incredibly important. Then I walk out my door of my office. I go downstairs. I sit down with my husband and my kids for dinner, and I spend the rest of my evening with them. And they get every ounce of time and attention and energy from me that they deserve. So my day may not have looked very balanced, but I promise you, I had a sense of equilibrium. I had peace of mind, I had calm, and I had ease. It's critical that we take the time to check in with ourselves, to make sure that we have that sense of calm, peace of mind, and ease every day. That sense of equilibrium that's rooted within us, that's anchored in us. And we have to nurture that. And part of how we nurture that is that self-reflection, that mindfulness. Here's the other great thing about equilibrium. There's no failing in equilibrium. You can't fail. You simply bring your awareness to whatever you did in that day or in that moment, and you trust that you will continue to spend your time and your energy and your attention on the things that are most important to you. Thank you for taking the time to attend this session, to listen to this. I hope you gain something from my journey in establishing a sense of equilibrium, and you take that into your life to reach new heights with ease.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to kick off the questions with a question that I have for you personally. So, do you have any tips for how to convince managers that you can handle a bigger job when you're already balancing so much and they can see that? I struggle with this.
That's a great question, Melissa. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me as well, Melissa. I've watched several of the sessions over the last few days, and it's just been, really well done and such great information and so many great people being brought together. So for including me in that. What I've found is that when you really anchor yourself in that sense of equilibrium and that peace of mind and that calm and ease that we talked about in the session, then the need to prove something starts to dissipate. So it's really about finding the work that you want to be doing, finding the work that is matched with what you found is important to you, and just do that work really well. And then there's, you always want to be in communication with the people that you report to, your managers, your peers at work, right? So we have a certain level of transparency that we want to create with them, but you also don't have to go complete transparency, right? So everybody doesn't need to know everything that you're dealing with in every moment of life. And so you share some and you do the work that you're there to do and make it known when you're ready for that next challenge or that next position. And you just do your work and you make that request to those people, or you put yourself in the running for that position that you want. And you just, you do you, and they're going to see that. You bring your whole self and people will see that.
Great. Yes, I do struggle for that. I take on way too much sometimes. Next question. Next question. What are some of the techniques you use to practice mindfulness?
Great question too. Thanks. So, I've found that very simple things can be used to bring our mindfulness back, to bring that self-reflection, that self-awareness. So as simple as breathing techniques. I mean, I do that all the time. I think a lot of us have heard of that square breathing, right? Where you breathe in for a certain number of counts, hold it for that same number of counts, breathe out that same number, hold it. Anything that slows us down to bring ourselves back to feeling centered and calm is going to be useful with mindfulness. Those are the kinds of things that I do with my kids as well, practically on a daily basis. If you guys are anything like me, I've got two, a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old running around my house in remote school. So any time of the day, it's useful to bring some of that mindfulness. Another thing I do is journaling. So taking the time to sit and reflect each day, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, and just write, and just get something out of my head, bring my awareness to my thoughts, anything that stops us again and has us really pay attention to what's going on internally for us can be used for mindfulness.
Great. I like those tips. So next question, this is from Melissa. She says, how did you get to the point of starting to work on your health and suffer less while balancing demands of work, motherhood, being a good spouse, and friend?
Yeah, that's it's not easy. It's not always easy. You hit that point, like I said in the session, it's, when you hit that point where you're no longer willing to tolerate the things that you're suffering with, then you have to take that moment to put yourself first. And we hear that all the time, right? The airplanes, you put your own mask on before you put the mask on your children. It's critical that we take the time to pay attention to what we need. And it's not always easy. And there were times where I made 3 dinners a lot of nights so that I had the food that I knew I needed that was going to nourish me and bring me what I needed. And then I still made sure my kids and my husband, if you guys live in a house like I do, you have eaters that eat all different things. And so you accommodate as much as you can or as much as you're willing to. But taking that time, it was worth it to spend that extra couple of minutes on a Sunday to do food prep or whatever it is, to really pay attention to what I needed to. And as soon as I did that, it was easier to give what the other people in my world needed as well, including at work. I think my work became, I was more expressed at work. I brought more of myself to work when I knew I had what I needed for myself as well.
Great. Again, if you're just joining us, you can please enter any questions you have for Gabrielle in the chat, and I'll be sure to get to those shortly. Gabrielle, have you read any good books, or can you recommend any good books on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I love I love Brene Brown. I think she's
I do too.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many resources out there. I mean, there are, any number. I'm looking at my bookshelf next to me. I love reading about, I loved Daring Greatly, by the way. That was my favorite from Brene Brown. That I just found there was so much good stuff in there. And you've got Hit Refresh. That's another great one. If you're really looking at figuring out how do you match what's important to you to what you're bringing to work. Yeah, I mean, there are so many resources. Yeah, I saw somebody ask if I can write them down. I'd be happy to make a little list and post it into the session there as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I'm always looking for the next great book. So I love to get recommendations. So I was trying to write those down. I've read most of Brené's stuff. So looking forward to getting into some deeper books. Next question. So how can you really tell what is truly important versus what seems important every day?
Yeah, that's not always easy. I mean, I think, it's everything's important, right? But when we take that time that I talked about to really figure out what it is that we want for ourselves and what we want to line ourselves up to, then those other things that seemed really important before start to fall away. It becomes easier to say no to certain things, and you can check that. I've found for myself, I can check myself, and I can tell really quickly if there's something I'm asked to do, something that makes it onto a to-do list that I kind of go, I don't know if that's really, I don't need to be doing that one today. Or, that's something that I thought I should be doing. That's a big one, right? The things that we think we should be doing because we think that they seem important. I typically can find for myself that I've got a little feeling in my gut that I can tell if something is something that doesn't have to be where I spend my time, or that thing that I'm avoiding doing, or it's not, here's another one for me, something my husband could do. There are many things that seem very important that I think I should be doing, that if I look, my husband could take that one today. So I tend to evaluate that for myself by checking in with myself, my gut, my intuition. That's another big one, especially for us as women, right? We have pretty great intuition typically. So starting to trust that, and trust that we will know those things that line up with what we say are most important to us in our lives, and go with those. And those other things start to fall away or find another home for getting done.
Yes, yes. I'm getting so much out of this actually. Okay, so next question. Can you give us some tips on managing life's many distractions, especially those that might take focus away from what really matters to you most?
Yeah, I can. And I will say one of the things I'd say is we roll with the punches, right? So any given day, I'm on, in a client meeting on Zoom or on Teams or whatever platform you use, right? And one of my kids walks to my office door and gently knocks. And so on one hand, in the time that we're living in right now, it's really about rolling with those and being able to be respectful. And I think we all have so much more respect for what we're each dealing with now, right? This whole time has, I think, brought our humanity to the forefront to be able to say, I'm on with a client and their kid is going to be doing the same thing that mine might be doing. So while that could be a distraction in some cases, I think that it's good to leave some room for those as well, and not have that be a problem. And I don't have to yell at my son for knocking on the door because he wants to tell me what he did in his science homework. I can turn and say, okay, great, just a minute. And so balancing those out, I think, is important. Finding a way to include some of those distractions in our life right now is really important. And that doesn't mean we have to lose our focus. When I am sitting with my clients, I am 100% with my clients, and that knock on the door comes, and I'm able to say, just a moment, I apologize, turn, give my attention there, and bring it back here, because those are things that are incredibly important to me. Forwarding my work with my clients and being here and being present for my children.
Yeah, I can imagine that's difficult at times. Again, if you're just joining us, if you have questions for Gabrielle, please enter them in the chat, and she'll be happy to answer those for you. Okay. Looks like we have another couple of minutes for one more question if anyone has a question. Oh, looks like a question is coming. What do you see for 2021? Oh, that's a great one.
Oh, that's a That's a good one. Well, first of all, I think 2021, given the time that we've had, the bulk of this year in 2020, I think we all can be incredibly well set up for having 2021 reflect what is most important to us. If we've got that sense of equilibrium for ourselves, we're making those choices, we're finding the path that's really, truly right for us, then we are so well poised to just jump right into that in 2021. This is such an opportunity to take the time to figure that out for ourselves, to really find our path, find that equilibrium for ourselves, and get that rooted, do that work now, so that in 2021 you can just soar. And I really think that that's possible for each of us.
Okay, had another couple of questions come in, so we'll go into speed round mode since we're almost out of time. But question number one is from Shelley. She says, how has your family responded to your change in outlook, and your clients as well?
You know what? Everybody's responded really well. I think when I made some of these shifts for myself, and I found this for myself, then that comes out in the work that I'm doing and in my time with my family. And it brings that to them as well. I'm somebody that, as I said, you bring your whole self to work, right? I don't hesitate to do that. And so I do that with my kids. I'm having these conversations with my kids as well. I mentioned I do mindfulness with them. My husband and we talk through all of this every step of the way. And so it's, you create an environment that really supports your focusing on what's most important in each of those moments. And everybody adjusted. My husband, my kids, everybody adjusted to, I'm not available every second of every day. I'm here. You can, we will always have time together. I'll be here for everything you need. And there are times like today where I kick them all out of the house. I said, everybody out. Nobody's online while I'm here doing this, so I can be focused and present, and everybody adjusts. And I think with clients, that goes back to sort of that piece about the humanity for each other. I found that when I had more room for my clients to have their kids, knocking on their doors and being with them while we're in a meeting, they had more room for the same. And it just makes for a deeper connection for ourselves with the people we're around, the work we're doing, and our clients.
Great. And this is one last question. And I think this is a great one for a closer. So what would you tell your youngest self or an early careerist on how to thrive in any field?
That's a good one.
It was good.
I think I go back to what I said about establishing equilibrium for ourselves, right? Figure out what's most important to you at any stage of life. And that's going to change. There are certain things that may not, because they are fundamental to the fabric of who we are, but figure out what's most important to you. And then don't be afraid to go for that. Find the path that fulfills that for you. Be inclusive of everything and let everything else be. You don't have to fix everything, make everything perfect. You just find what's most important. You spend your time and attention on that, and the rest will fall into place.
Well, that's some great advice. I hope everyone takes that to heart. And I've gotten some key takeaways from this myself on how to be more mindful and present. So I do appreciate it. I appreciate your time jumping on here today for the live Q&A. Thank you all in the audience for jumping on and participating. And thank you very much, Gabrielle.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melissa. Really appreciate the opportunity.